Hi, friends. Thank you for joining us today again for Food for Thought. This is Sunil Chandy. I'm here at Christ Episcopal Church, and this program is an extension of our ministry out in the community. And it's been, and so I ask you, it's been great. But I ask you to say hello. Say hello to everyone who's watching with us. There are many people who are watching from various places, some across the globe, and hearing about Westerly and all that Westerly has to offer, and especially at Westerly and Stonington, especially Christ Church and this community. And so I thank you for being here. Today we have a wonderful guest because I've been preparing for this conversation for a bit. You might have seen that I've been riding my bike. That's one of the recommendations of my doctor, and also it keeps me sane, and I think that's always something that my wife wants me to be sane. And so I've been riding my bike all over Westerly and taking some images and kind of just touching, and then kind of using it as a commercial for the conversations that we're going to be engaging in. And today, or yesterday, the day before yesterday, actually, I went over to see the Watch Hill Lighthouse, and hopefully you will have seen it. And we have today as our guest the president of the Watch Hill Lighthouse Watch Hill Lighthouse Keepers Association. I'm sorry, it's a mouthful for me, but it's the president is Ann Johnson, and she is amazing, and she's a member of the Watch Hill Chapel, and she's also a member of Christ Episcopal Church, and just an amazing lady with a wonderful story. And we are going to be talking with her right now. So Ben, bring her on.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good to see you.
It's great to see you. It's so great to see you. And every time I see you, there are a couple of ways I see you. I see you now almost all the time on the screen, but in church and sometimes running all over Westerly, Watch Hill. It's an inspiration to watch you run, because you're focused and you do your stuff.
Thank you.
And it's an inspiration for us who want to get healthier to kind of engage in something that's pretty powerful for ourselves. So, Ann, how are you doing in general?
I'm doing okay. It's been an interesting stretch of time. I worked remotely all spring teaching my students, and actually did a lot of work down at the lighthouse. We had a number of projects, some of which began in November. And then because we had this sort of quiet time where we could not, unfortunately, welcome the public to all parts of the property, we were able to do some much needed renovation to the lawn area, to part of the driveway, and replace the concrete sidewalks. So that was an added bonus.
Wow, I didn't know all that work was just being done recently then.
Yes.
And so when I went there the other day, it looked gorgeous.
Thank you.
I mean, it was just wonderful to just be in that almost peninsula where you right in. I don't know if that's the right term, but it's just this right as it goes out and it faces the ocean. It's a beautiful setting.
It's my favorite spot in our town. I have to be honest. It's a very therapeutic and peaceful place.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the history of the lighthouse.
Well, from what we understand, there has been some sort of a watch tower or light in Watch Hill since, give or take, the so-called French and Indian War, which occurred from roughly 1756 until 1763, the last of these engagements. We are not sure exactly where the original watch tower was located. Some Westerly historians maintain it was on top of the hill that's often called the Watch Hill, which is where the big white house purchased by Taylor Swift sits. Other people think it might have been another hill known as Sunset Hill, which is also within the village of Watch Hill. But the point is, somewhere starting in the middle of that 18th century period, we believe it was Native Americans built some sort of a watch tower to provide signal. When we get to the official lighthouse itself, there was an act of Congress in 1806, signed into law by President Jefferson, to create two official lighthouses supported and paid for by the federal government. We have ours, and then we have another across the bay down towards closer to Connecticut, really. And so the creation of these two lighthouses in 1806, that sort of started the whole positioning of a lighthouse at Watch Hill.
Wow.
Yeah, so it stretches back to this act of Congress in 1806. And then the structure, the first structure, of which we have no concrete evidence, no pictorial images whatsoever. The first structure was built in 1807. The family of George and Thankful Foster provided land down in Watch Hill, that Watch Hill Point, Lighthouse Point, as we call it today. Okay. And so there was a structure built there starting in 1807.
Wow.
And that was the first lighthouse.
So it was President Jefferson who commissioned the project.
Correct. He was the one that signed this act of Congress to create our lighthouse.
And how has it been? Has it been useful for our the shipping industry? And
yes. Well, we have a lot of reefs, and those of us who are lucky enough to get out on the water, there are a lot of dangerous reefs right there at that Fisher's Island Sound. Sugar Reef is one of them. Watch Hill Reef is another. And we have had hundreds of shipwrecks, hundreds. And particularly as the sort of post-Civil War increase in shipping really increased the traffic going through that channel, that Fisher's Island Sound, more and more the lighthouse became very significant because you had both passenger ships, but more importantly, these ships carrying products from the industrial north over to Europe or down into the south to pick up raw materials. So this was a very busy shipping area, and even the first lighthouse keeper, a man named Jonathan Nash, he records seeing, oh heavens, I mean, upwards of 40 some odd shipwrecks just in his early period in that very first lighthouse. Yeah, so very dangerous waters out there.
Wow. Well, that's significant. And so the lighthouse, Anne, I've never actually visited any lighthouse, and I'm looking forward to actually coming in and seeing.
You must.
Yeah. How does I mean, is it, so it's a cylinder almost, and then does the light rotate around?
So today there's been a lot of change. 1855, the present lighthouse was constructed. And it's about the same time that our sister lighthouse up at Beavertail in Jamestown was constructed. So those two are sister lighthouses. They look the same. So the tower itself is interesting. From the outside, you've got this granite tower, about 45 feet in height, westerly granite constructed.
Westerly granite.
Westerly granite came right down the Pawcatuck River from the quarries right behind where I live. So inside that tower, which looks square from the outside, inside is a round brick tower with a circular stair. Now, for decades, that was supported with kind of an oil-based light. But once we constructed this new tower, what became very popular was this French-designed Fresnel lens, which is an amazing device that actually sat on a bit of a mercury bath and we had a kind of a, how would you say, it's sort of almost like a rotating clock mechanism that shifted weights within the tower that rotated that light.
Wow.
And we had white beams and red beams, and they circulated. And that was the lens that sat up there until 1986. It's a what we call a fourth order Fresnel lens. And we have it today on loan from the Coast Guard in our museum. So it's actually there, this original light that was there from sometime after the 1850s until the decommissioning in 1986. Today, it's an automatic light. So it's just automated. It gets checked by the Coast Guard periodically, but it doesn't require any human intervention particularly.
Mm. So is there anyone actually, so I have these romantic images of lighthouses and people staying and living there, and the lighthouse keeper and so forth. Is that still a reality nowadays, or?
Yes and no. Today, we are lucky enough to have the fire chief for the district of Watch Hill, the village of Watch Hill. He lives there. He is our property manager, a wonderful man named Bob Peacock, and he's my eyes and ears and knows everything that's going on down there. But our license, the new license that we received a couple of years ago, is in accordance with all of the updated Coast Guard rules, which stipulate that the renting of apartments and the kind of granting of privileges to live in lighthouses are kind of limited these days to property managers. Previous to that, there were, of course, lighthouse keepers starting with Jonathan Nash, and Nash went on to begin the whole hotel industry in Watch Hill. He was responsible for building the first of the big hotels, he and his family, and then we had so many of them up until the turn of the 20th century.
Mm.
Yeah, so there were many. And then the last official keeper from the Coast Guard moved out in '86 when the lighthouse was officially automated.
Mm.
And that's when the Lighthouse Keepers Association took over the running of the lighthouse.
So since 1986.
1986, August 31st. That was the official decommissioning ceremony.
Well, I know Bob Peacock, and he's the chief of the fire department there in Watch Hill, and wonderful man, and he's got a great crew of people there. We do a service for the firefighters and so forth with them, and he's just a very good citizen.
He is indeed.
Yeah. So you know what, the thing about the lighthouse that I think about in terms of light going out to people, giving the romantic idea about it being foggy and dark, and the light that goes out from this lighthouse actually guides the ship onto the shore. I've heard so many hymns in church sung with that idea, and so it's. I'm wondering if it's born out. Like even some of the hymns that we have in our hymnal. I have to check if it might been written by some folks who might have seen like our lighthouse here in Watch Hill.
Some of those hymns.
Yeah, I have to see.
Yeah.
I have to see, because it's just a wonderful idea. I'm sure, like the 1938 hurricane. How did the lighthouse did it have an effect on that warning system?
Well, every time a storm hits Watch Hill of significance, the lighthouse tends to be affected. In '38, the lighthouse became an island. Essentially, Lighthouse Point became an island. There was a bit of a breach in the road, and the old boathouse that had served the original life-saving station that had been there since 1879, that boathouse was knocked off its foundation and subsequently removed. What we're lucky about, or what is lucky about the lighthouse, is that the buildings sit high on the point. And in the current CRMC, Coastal Resources Management, as they're investigating the continual rise of sea level around all of our coastal communities, they have provided devices online, particularly something called storm tools, that enable us to predict the sort of experience of certain buildings if sea level rise goes up a certain number of feet, or if we have a high tide wave incident. The lighthouse itself and its immediate buildings are safe. So every time we have a storm, the buildings themselves are fine. It's the road and it's the seawall. And right after I became president in 2012, Hurricane Sandy, or Superstorm Sandy, as it's probably more appropriately called,
Yeah.
Superstorm Sandy devastated that area. Once again, we were, for a short period of time, an island. We lost over 220 feet of our seawall. We had boulders and some of the granite revetment that surround the point were tossed up on the lawn. So the lighthouse is not, it's not totally protected. It's a very vulnerable spot. The buildings are okay, but it's the surrounding point that has to be protected.
Hmm. So how can the community help with that? Is there a way for us to help with
Well,
this? Because seawater rising is going to be is a reality,
it
right?
is a reality. It very much is a reality. What we're trying to do at the Lighthouse Keepers Association is make as many people as possible within Westerly, and indeed the greater Rhode Island world, make them aware of the importance of lighthouses. And while today there are so many automatic devices and automated devices that people on the water can use, lighthouses are no longer essential, but they have this incredible place in the history of every community.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the Westerly Middle School now has the study of lighthouses, in particular the Watch Hill Lighthouse, as part of their curriculum. And we've been lucky to welcome groups of fifth graders at the end of their school year to come down and get to know the lighthouse. I had a senior at Westerly High a couple of years ago do his senior research study on the Watch Hill Lighthouse and its role in Westerly, its connection to Westerly Granite, its connection to Westerly shipping. So for the community to be aware that this beautiful spot also is vital to our history, and that its preservation continues to inform people about the importance of our community throughout Rhode Island's history. It's a beautiful spot, but it's a very, very important historic spot. So the community can help by simply appreciating it and visiting it, and yes, always making contributions when that's possible, but more important, just being aware and enjoying the place in the most respectful but also enthusiastic way.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because what you're saying is that it is part of our identity, and the identity of even a lighthouse being a beacon of hope.
Oh yeah.
Light. I mean, that says so much about how it could say so much about how we could be for the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
That's beautiful. And so. And you're so understand the technology of this whole thing, but your training is in English, isn't it?
English and history and art history too. Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful. I love the way you engage in it, so that you know even the complexities of the technology of all of this, and that's
Up to a point. There are limits on the technology.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, and
Yeah.
this is more personal. How long have you lived here in Westerly, Watch Hill? Has this been always home for you?
Well, my great-grandmother and great-grandfather were the first that we know of to start coming to this community over a century ago. And then my beloved grandmother had a home in Watch Hill. And that was where all of we children, or grandchildren, I should say, gathered for decades. And then as she grew older, and then we eventually sold that house, we kind of settled all around. So I've still got family in Watch Hill, but most of us are now sprinkled around Westerly. And it really is home. There is no place where all of us feel more connected than when we're here. And it's always been just an absolutely cherished part of our lives to be in Westerly and in Watch Hill, and just to embrace the town in all seasons. I mean, I'm here year round. I love it.
It's funny though, because I'm a recent transplant here. I've been here only 5.5 years, but it's such a charming environment. I mean, even when I was riding my bike down to the lighthouse, waving to people, just having casual conversations. People just seem to really open themselves up to being kind and gentle. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I've heard the phrase the Westerly way. I think that's what's one of the things that's so beautiful and attractive of this place.
Well, when I go running, people wave to me all the time, and it's everybody from people I know from stores to people I know from family to people I've grown up with, and half the time I don't even recognize people when I am running, but then they stop me later when I'm getting coffee at Dunkin' Donuts or when I'm at Stop and Shop, and they say, "Hey, I saw you earlier today," and it is the Westerly way. It's an incredibly friendly place, and we all love it. So, and it's a wonderful town. It really is.
And you work during you work week in New York City, so there's
I do.
hustle and bustle of teaching in New York City, and then but then here it seems like, and I used to live in New York City also when I went to seminary, and I loved the city because it was just always active. But then there's a different environment. You're able to take a breath and take a deep breath and reorient yourself to see the beauty around us. And I think even even being able to go to the Rocky Ale House to see that static I hear right now. Yeah, it's gone, I think.
Coming back.
Yeah. But and I'm just so glad that you're here, and I also enjoy your husband and your children, and David, Catherine, and Carolyn. But they're and the kids are older. They look like your sisters, by the way.
Thank you. I'll let them know.
Yes. And the thing is, they're so mature and kind, and it's beautiful. And David's wonderful. I enjoy meeting him all the time.
Thank you.
So let me ask you, one of the things that I do at the end of this session is just ask for a parting words of wisdom, because we're dealing with this COVID crisis throughout the country, and I know particularly as you're a teacher engaged in helping kids deal with their own anxieties and frustrations, and helping them to see past this event to a future that will see them stronger, at the end of this situation, right? What would you give us in terms of advice for dealing with this particular challenge, and knowing that this challenge is only one challenge in life that we're going to find some learnings from that'll help us deal with future challenges?
Oh, what advice? I mean, I think one of the best pieces of advice always, and this comes from my love of this community, is to always get outside and to remember that you're part of a bigger space. And I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to be sure that we are always that we know where we are and that we're right inside. Particularly right now, many people don't want to go outside, and I totally understand that. But if you can find a place where you can nobody is really around you and you have your mask on and you can appreciate the beauty and you can walk and just get some fresh air. I think that that is an incredibly important thing to do for your health. And then to remember indeed that this is a period of time, and there have been many in history where we have gone through experiences that we never thought we would have, whether it's a war or whether it's 9/11 or whether it's a pandemic in 1918. And these are things that are part of the human experience, but you remember that you are not in it alone. And you remember that you've got to take with you the people that you love and be sure that you're supporting them and in contact with them. I think that that's very important. We are part of a bigger human connection here in a human world. And if you can't get outside, if that's too much, well, then be sure you use the phone. We've got this wonderful thing of technology now where we can call or we can use Zoom or we can use Facebook and we can actually communicate in a way that people were not able to do even 20 years ago. So it's a phenomenal ability to keep that connection. And that's vital.
And I am just so grateful that you're in this community. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you very much. God bless you. And I'll hope to see you running and also in church.
You will indeed. Always.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
I love that. Beautiful. Helping us to realize that we're part of to go out and see that we're part of a bigger space, maybe to go see the bigger picture, in other words. Wow, such great wisdom. Folks, we usually end our time with a prayer. And this is a prayer that was constructed by Bishop Thomas Maine. It's a wonderful prayer. And let us pray this. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, you traveled through towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health through quality medical care. Heal us from our fear, which prevents nations from working together and neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support the medical professionals, emergency responders, teachers and students, and those who do work in our community, our caregivers, our counselors, priests, and pastors. We ask this all in your name, Jesus. Amen. Join with us in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us on temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, go in peace to spread the light of God like a lighthouse to the world around us. The world needs it right now.